Friends with benefits and situationships usually involve a partner that's an avoidant, and most commonly, a dismissive avoidant. There are reasons for this. First of all, the avoidant wants love, they want connection. They definitely want external validation. In fact, they rely heavily on it. And the situationship or the friends with benefits situation, that satisfies some of their need for connection, for validation, and to an even further extent, maybe a little bit of love. But they get to keep their walls up because they're not committed to you. They have an excuse to not be vulnerable, to not let you in behind that castle wall that they built around their heart. So why are they so afraid of committing and making an actual relationship? Sometimes they can even act like you're officially a couple, but they won't put a title on it. They say, why do we need to complicate things? Or I'm just not ready for a relationship. But meanwhile, they can act all romantic and into you. Or maybe they just act that way sometimes when they're getting that validation, physical validation from you, and then they're distant when you're apart. Well, the dismissive avoidant directly associates commitment with rejection and abandonment. Commitment equals abandonment in their mind. Because if they commit to you, you are ultimately going to reject and abandon them. That is their fear. So how did they come to this conclusion, which really isn't based in logic? This is a person that was on the receiving end of consistent childhood emotional neglect. They were not given that love and that nurturing the way that they needed as a kid. Often growing up with stoic parents who didn't say things like, I love you, and did not nurture them and rejected their feelings. So they personalized that neglect, which means they grew up to feel defective and unlovable, like there's something wrong with them. It's a wound of shame. So that shame wound prevents them from taking down their walls because their fear, and it usually is an unconscious fear, but some of them are consciously aware of it. The fear is if I lower my walls and I let my partner in, especially if this is a wonderful partner that's loving and consistent, this person is going to figure out that I'm not good enough. They're going to figure out that I'm defective, that I'm worthless, and they're going to reject and abandon me. So emotional closeness feels unsafe. Being vulnerable feels unsafe because in their mind, if they get too vulnerable, they're going to get rejected and abandoned. So how does that tie into commitment? Well, when you commit to somebody and you really make that next step, it is implied through the commitment level, a label that you have to be vulnerable with this person, that you have to lower your walls for the person that you're committed to. So now there's a pressure for them to be emotionally available and vulnerable with the person that they're committed to really open up their heart and take down the walls. But since taking down the walls in their mind equals rejection and abandonment, therefore commitment also equals rejection and abandonment. So if they commit to you, they have to get vulnerable with you, which means you're going to reject them. So it feels completely unsafe and it gives them a ton of anxiety. So there is one circumstance, however, where they can more easily actually commit fully to a partner. That is when their partner is also emotionally unavailable. Maybe another dismissive avoidant, maybe a narcissist, maybe somebody who has another pathological disorder, but somebody who's unavailable with walls up. Because there is no pressure for the avoidant to be vulnerable with the unavailable partner because that person has their walls up. The avoidant can keep their walls up. There might be a title on the relationship, but it feels safe because there's no threat of emotional intimacy in that relationship. So they can commit to those partners. But when they get a partner that is emotionally available to them, loving, consistent, someone they actually view in high regard that makes them feel things, that person is scary to commit to because that will give them a ton of anxiety because there is an unspoken pressure to be available and vulnerable in return. So if you're stuck in a situationship or if you're stuck in a friends with benefits situation and every time you try to get them to take it to the next level, they refuse, well, there's only really two things you can do. One is continue that dynamic and give yourself a ton more anxiety and push yourself further into anxious attachment as you're trying to earn the love from somebody who's not really giving it. Or You can hold boundaries with this person. Boundaries being your limits of what you want, what you don't want, what you need, what you don't need, what you'll tolerate, and what you won't tolerate. Also, what your expectations of your partner are. If you want a committed relationship and they refuse to commit to you, hold the boundary, do it in a nice way, and simply assert your needs. A committed, loving, open relationship is something that's very important to me, and that really is a boundary for me. It's a need. If that's not something that you're able or willing to do, that certainly is your choice, but then this dynamic would no longer work for me. There you go. You hold the boundary. You're standing up for yourself in a very kind, empathetic way, showing yourself a massive amount of self-respect and acknowledging your own self-worth and letting yourself know that your needs do matter. Now, the avoidant is going to have an option. They can either actually commit or they could walk away from you and lose you. If they walk away, what that means is they were never concerned about meeting your needs. They were never going to show up for you, and they were never going to meet your expectations. Sure, it can be sad to lose the person, but you never really had them. Not the way that you needed or wanted. Not the way that you were giving your heart to them. And you'll be sparing yourself all of that extra energy, anxiety, love, and effort that you'd be putting into them that they would not be putting back into you. And now, instead of being tied up in that dynamic, you will be able to be free to meet a person who is genuinely emotionally available for you. A person that does want the same things that you want and values the same things in a relationship that you value. But as long as you remain in that dynamic, the avoidant is getting what they want. Access to the benefits of you, getting the validation, the dopamine that comes along with the dynamic, without actually having to give anything of themselves, without pressure to meet your expectations, and without any pressures to be vulnerable. They essentially get everything they want, and you get nothing of what you want. So ask yourself, if they won't commit and they keep on essentially using you in that manner, do you have to allow them? And does this really benefit you, or is it only causing you more pain and pushing you further into insecurity? Make sure that you are not self-abandoning and you are taking care of yourself and standing up for your needs. You deserve so much more than just being somebody's friends with benefits.